You don't speak Spanish or no hablas inglés? No problem. We have included subtitles for English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French.
Normally, I make everyone wear name tags because there's 100 people in my apartment. And so as I meet people throughout the night, it feels like everyone knows everyone and you're the only one that doesn't know anyone. And it's not true. They're both from Colombia. That's a start. And I told you earlier that I owned a nightclub, and they have disposable income. Nightclub with big chandeliers hanging down from the ceiling in black and red. Your tips are based on whether they come back next week or not. And they go home and say, wow, that place was great. I met this couple from blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. Well, we talked earlier about couchsurfing events, couchsurfing parties. I mentioned that some people are good at it, some people aren't. And it's something that I want to be good at. It's something that I practice. I don't know if it was always natural, but if I see someone at my party and they're in a corner by themselves, I know they did not come to this party to stand in a corner by themselves. And normally I make everyone wear name tags because there's 100 people in my apartment. So as I meet people throughout the night, I'm constantly looking for the people that aren't socializing. Because they didn't come here to stand in a corner, but either they're introvert or they just have a hard time starting a conversation, or they feel like everyone. Sometimes when you go to an event like that, it feels like everyone knows everyone and you're the only one that doesn't know anyone. And it's not true, but it feels like that. So I want to say, hey, come here, man, have you met these two? You guys are both, like, I'm trying to think, okay, who else is, how can I introduce these people? What would they have in common that they might want to talk about? Oh, they're both from Colombia. That's a start. And I told you earlier that I owned a nightclub.
What was the concept of the nightclub? Can you...
It was a country bar.
Okay, awesome.
And all country music is not my favorite music, but I'm not the customer.
Okay, I actually like it.
I like it, but it's not always my first choice of music.
Alright. Why did you choose a country bar if it's not your first choice?
Because that I opened it, there were no country bars, but there is a country following. And most people who like country, they're a little bit older and they have disposable income.
Okay, I see.
And I'm running a business.
Of course.
So it's about, there was no country bar, and yet there was this big contingency of people who love country music, and they had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And I had this huge nightclub with big chandeliers hanging down from the ceiling in black and red decor and VIP sections and a mezzanine level. It was like a saloon out of a Western movie, and it was perfect for country music. I wanted to make sure that people felt comfortable. Don't let people stand in front of you and sad.
Yes.
Talk to them and introduce them to people around them, because your tips are based on whether they come back next week or not.
Yes.
Why would they want to come back next week? What was interesting about tonight? And if they meet a bunch of people and they go home and say, wow, that place was great. I met this couple from blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. They need a story. They need something to talk about. But if they just stand there and watch videos all night, how fun is that? What is their motivation to go back the next time? But if you can create some human interactions, it's all about that, man. It's creating some human interactions that cause feelings and emotions, and you want that again and again. My club has been closed for 14 years.
Okay.
And on my Facebook, I still see people talking about it. I still see them wearing our shirts, the shirts like that had our logo on it. 14 years later,
Why did it close? Why did it close?
It was in a kind of bad part of the city, and it kept getting worse. That part of the city kept getting worse. The crime was going up.
All right.
And so businesses around us started going under because they didn't have any cash reserves. So the area was like nightclubs, restaurants, pubs, boutiques, and they all started closing. And so it was no longer a destination area.
Okay. What have you learned about forming relationships? Can you give some advice to the viewers? Any interesting experiences?
I will say that the last 10 years of my life in the topic of relationships is probably the best of my entire life. About 10 years ago, I was in Columbus, Ohio. My family's from Ohio. And I stayed with some couch surfers, and we went to a couch surfing party, and there were a bunch of people there that was talking about polyamorous relationships. And I had never heard of that word before. Apparently I have been living under a rock. And it intrigued me. I was like, So people live like that, like 3 people or 4 people in a relationship. And there were so many people at that party that were in these polyamorous relationships. And so I'm asking many questions out of ignorance to seeking to understand. And I was really intrigued by their answers. And since that time, I've been more open to things that maybe I had not been open to before. And just by being open, I have found I've experienced things that I never would have experienced before. And I'm thankful for those experiences because I feel like in most of the world, the expectation is that when we're 18 or 19 years old, we find, someone in our community and we fall in love and we get married and everyone's so happy and there's this big wedding and it's such a sacred event. And the expectation in most cultures is that these 2 young people, 18, 19 years old, will stay married until one of them dies. That is not a realistic expectation. And for me personally, based on some of the things that I've learned through these kind of different kinds of relationships, is that I don't want to be married. I do love being in relationships, but when I enter a relationship, it's not I don't ever think this is until I die or until they die.
So Rob, what's your favorite book? One book that you can recommend to the viewers, which has influenced a lot, or which you like a lot? Maybe 2 or 3 books or so.
To be honest, I don't read a lot. And the last books that I've read were probably motivational in philosophies.
Like it can be any book. It
And
doesn't.
professional books like this, 7 Steps of Highly Effective People, like Stephen Covey, or it's mostly books like that where I want to learn how to be happy, how to solve problems, like those things. Those are the kind of books I read.
As a last question, do you have any comments left? Anything left to say that I haven't asked you?
I do think that there's a lot of joy in the world. I think that people
Struggle finding it. And so I'll share with them what I shared with you. Imagine that your life is pre-programmed with DNA of thousands of years. We're pre-programmed. We have values and belief systems that really aren't ours. They were handed to us from our culture, from our family, from our parents, from our grandparents, but they're not our values. And to be able to get that out of your head and start with a clean slate and to say, what are my values? One thing I haven't told you yet is that I grew up in a Pentecostal church. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Do you know Amish?
Yes.
It's really similar.
All right.
It's a very strict religion. So from going to a very strict religion, I'll give you an example of how strict. We fasted once a week, 4 times a week, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Friday night.
All right.
Women had to wear long dresses, long sleeves, no makeup, no jewelry, not even a wedding ring, hair uncut on top of their head. Men weren't allowed to have facial hair of any kind. It had to be above the ears, not on the collar. Long sleeves, no shorts. A very strict religion. And to go from that and to get all of that shit out of my head that I had grown up with and to say, that's not who I am. I don't believe that. We weren't allowed to watch television. When I first joined the military, I bought a television. And I didn't turn it on for 2 months. 2 months! Because I was afraid
Oh wow.
that if I turned the TV on and God came back to claim his people and I was watching television, that I would go to hell. Up I was. I can look back on that now with a lot of humor. But that's where I was. And that's where millions, billions of people are today. They have those unrealistic fears of things that are not real, not true, but it guides their life. They live in fear.
Thank you so much for watching this video and for your support. It really means a lot to me. Thank you so much.